Hello, I'm Tigray. I'll just give you a quick update about the status of the so-called humanitarian truce that the Ethiopian authorities declared about 2 days ago. So a couple of minutes ago, the Tigray government issued a statement saying that not even a single truck had got into Tigray as of yet. And although to most of us who have been following Ethiopian politics, and especially Abiy Ahmed and his modus operandi when it comes to Tigray, the announcement that not even a single truck has been allowed to get into Tigray wouldn't have come as a surprise, right? Because we knew when we read the statement from the Ethiopian authorities 2 days ago that despite the claim the statement makes about the regime's desire and plan to help reduce the pain in Tigray and to alleviate all the suffering in Tigray, the real intention and purpose of the statement was to placate the different members in the international community, partly because of the punitive sanctions that might be in the works in some quarters in the US, for instance, and also the mounting pressure that was going in the direction of the Ethiopian regime. So I think that the real purpose of the statement was to make different actors in the international community happy rather than to actually allow aid to get into Tigray, because there is every reason to believe that the regime still continues to believe that the right way to go about with respect to Tigray is to continue the cruel policy of starvation. I think the agreement that still exists between Eritrea and Ethiopia and the different militias and regional authorities in Tigray is the way to contain and handle the Tigray Defense Forces is by inflicting as much damage as possible, whether that is by starvation, by using drones and every other mechanism. So that policy hasn't changed, but that's not a policy that could be defended or sustained in the face of pressure and demand on the part of some actors in the international community that is barbaric and that should change. So the way to the Ethiopian authorities' belief is that they could get around that problem by saying the right things in public and still continuing the blockade and siege on Tigray through third-party forces like the Afar forces and the Amhara forces, for instance, by giving them the carte blanche to behave in however way they want to behave. So they could always find a way to make sure that aid doesn't actually get into Tigray. In the meantime, they could continue to say the right things in public to the international community. And I think that was the main reason why Abiy issued that statement 2 days ago. And most of us, at least sensible observers of Ethiopian politics and how Ethiopians generally function, will have known that. And today's announcement by the Tigray government that not even a single truck had been allowed into Tigray wouldn't have come as a shock. Although maybe some of us might have naively, and I would include myself in that group, believe that Abiy would allow a couple of trucks to trickle into Tigray to kind of change or to paint itself in positive light, to trick the international community into saying that, okay, there is real change now. Before it was false promises and all that and deceptions, but now the regime is allowing some trucks. So I thought some trucks would be allowed to get into Tigray. And so to know from the statement issued by the Tigray government that hasn't even been allowed was a bit of a surprise. But on balance, on the whole, it's not something that I hadn't expected. So today I just want to talk to kind of give you some context as to why no reasonable, fair-minded person should believe anything that Abiy says. And I'm going to rely on a piece that our colleague, Gabriel Christos, our colleague at Tagahat, wrote this morning for Tagahat. It's a brilliant piece. I strongly recommend you to read it. But Gabriel Christos kind of outlines some big lies that Abiy told the international community in the course of the past 3 years with respect to the war on Tigray. And the first preposterous, really, lie that Abiy told was when he was interviewed in a very kind of staged and orchestrated interview on one of the state controlled TV. I think it must have been in September of 2021 or October of 2021. I couldn't be sure either way, but it was a couple of months before he invaded Tigray. He was asked that there were talk of Eritrea wanting to invade Tigray and of Eritrea and Ethiopia forming a pact to invade Tigray. And Abiy, in a very kind of contrived way, said that it was crazy of people to think that that could actually happen in Ethiopia, and that it would be a betrayal on the part of the Ethiopian government to allow a foreign force to come and invade a part of your own country. So he said that there was no way that would happen. And he said that even if Eritrea wanted to do that, there is no way that the Ethiopian people would allow that to happen. So he was giving assurance to the Tigrayans, maybe so that Tigrayans would be relaxed about the possibility of Eritrea invading them. But we know what happened. A couple of weeks later, not only was Eritrea involved in Ethiopian politics or engaged in Ethiopian politics, but Eritrea invaded Tigray and committed the most grisly and horrific atrocities in Tigray. So that was the first big lie. Of course, there were others before, but at least with respect to the war on Tigray. And that should have been a red flag in terms of what kind of person Abiy is as a politician, and how much he is willing and happy to lie if he thought that it would advance his interest. And then the other big lie that he told was in a telephone conversation with the UN Secretary General. And this conversation happened on the 10th of December 2020. And it was regarding the involvement of Eritrean troops in Tigray. By then, there had been a lot of reports about not only the involvement of Eritreans, but also the nature and the criminality of the troops. And Abiy told the Secretary General, in the face of all the reports, all the evidence, that Eritrea hadn't been involved in Tigray, and that any talk of Eritrea in Tigray is just a lie. And the Secretary General, of course, being naive and also having an incentive to believe that lie, relayed that message to the world. And he tweeted that Abiy had given him guarantees that Eritrea wasn't involved. So that was such a blatant and flagrant lie that he was allowed to get away with by the international community, but also by Ethiopians. I think by then, people should have asked him, why is it that you are humiliating the country in the open, in public, by lying such a crazy lie? But that didn't happen. So he carried on, and he went on getting away with murder, literally. And then there were a lot of lies since, but the third big lie that Gabriel Christos points out in the piece that he wrote for Tagahat today is something that he said on the 29th of June 2021, following the total annihilation and routing of his forces from Tigray. He said that he had declared a unilateral ceasefire. He didn't call it truce then, and apparently they didn't know the word truce then. They said that they had declared a unilateral ceasefire so that, number one, Tigrayan farmers would focus on farming, unperturbed by the specter of war, and number two, so that aid would get into Tigray unfettered and unimpeded and unobstructed. And we know what happened, right? Not only was aid not allowed into Tigray, but that was the beginning of the official, or maybe I should say de facto, blockade on Tigray. So to the international community said that it was a unilateral ceasefire, but what actually happened on the ground was a total cruel blockade was imposed upon Tigray. And then there were a number of lies following that as well, but the one that Gabriel Christos highlights in the piece is something that happened about 2 weeks ago regarding statement issued by the regime saying that about 20 trucks were on the way from Samara in Afar region, the capital city of Afar, to Tigray. And it's about 1 day's, roughly speaking, drive from Samara to Mekelle. But that was another lie. No trucks were on the way. No trucks were rolling to Tigray, as we are constantly reminded of by different excitable media outlets. And it also later transpired that not only were they not on the way, on the road, but no clearance has been given for any truck to leave Afar and go to Tigray. So that was a lie, that there was no truck on the way to Tigray. And then the other lie that happened is, of course, the one that kind of prompted me to record this video, which is the statement issued 2 days ago about a possible enactment of a unilateral, or rather a humanitarian truce. And by the look of things, by the statement of the Tigray government, and judging by the previous pattern, there is no reason to believe that it's different this time around. I don't think aid would get into Tigray, and to the extent that I'm surprised, it's only because I thought maybe they would allow a couple of trucks to get into Tigray to kind of give a misleading impression that this time around they mean business. So those are the points that I want to highlight, but also I want to make an appeal to some people in the Ethiopian political space who are providing support to Abiy, who believe, maybe naively, that sustaining the siege on Tigray, the blockade on Tigray, the extraordinarily cruel blockade on Tigray is something that would benefit Ethiopia in any way, shape or form. And my point is that it is not. Maybe some of you might think that the blockade is going to affect people in some far-flung places in Tigray, but it's not going to affect you. Maybe some of you believe that, but you shouldn't believe that. It's true that Tigrayans are the most affected, but it's only a matter of time before you also started to feel the heat, the pain of that. There is no way that a regime singularly focused on inflicting as much damage as possible on Tigray is going to make your life any better. And actually, I was listening to the discussion of the Amhara Congress. I think it's the Prosperity Party yearly meeting and assessment and all that. And every person was complaining about how in dire straits everybody in Bahardar is, how worse off life has become in Bahardar compared to 3 or 4 years ago. There is no way that a regime that splurges money on buying drones and modern armaments to crush your own people in Tigray is going to make your life better. That's just naive belief, and it's about time that you understood that and said enough was enough. But also, if the regime is used to resolving political differences by laying siege on people, when there will be some political uprisings or political opposition in other parts of Ethiopia, in your hometown, is going to use the same exact same cruel tactic that is deploying on Tigray. So it's going to come home to you as well. So and I could go on citing other reasons why you should stand up and say you shouldn't do this on our brothers in Tigray. Out of principle, if out of nothing else. So that's my message for today, and thank you for listening to me. In terms of the channel, if time allows, I'm kind of thinking of producing videos every other day. I don't think it's going to be easy to sustain, but I will try to give you updates about the current developments in Ethiopia, at least until the situation in Tigray significantly improves. I am planning to do that, but I can't promise 100%. But at least that's the plan now. And then, of course, in between there will be some interviews. I will have guests on, and there will be panel discussions. But on a regular basis, I'm kind of thinking to continue to do this, and we will see how far we can go with that. But